Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I call the August 29, 2024 special board meeting of the Arizona Board of Regents to order. Suzanne, would you please confirm we have a quorum?
Yes, Chair Madam, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. The board is scheduled to meet in executive session for legal advice and discussion regarding the appointment of a multiple-year employment contract for Dr. Suresh Garimella as the University of Arizona president, for legal advice and discussion regarding a transition contract for President Robbins, and for legal advice and discussion regarding the University of Arizona Global Campus. At approximately 11 o'clock, the board will resume the public meeting to hear items on its agenda. The board will then reconvene in executive session at approximately 12:30 to conduct annual reviews with the Enterprise Executive Committee and President Cruz Rivera, and a review of assignments with the Enterprise Executive Committee. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session for the executive session items listed on the agenda?
So,
Thank you. So there is a second?
second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Any abstention? The motion carries. The board will now convene in executive session. The public session of the special board meeting is now resumed. Rachel, would you please confirm we have a quorum?
Yes, Chair Madam, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first item is the approval of the consent agenda. Does anyone have any conflicts to declare on items 3 to 10 scheduled for consent? Hear none. I would like to separate the consent agenda into two motions as I am on the CRC board. We will have the following two motions. One motion for items 3 to 8 and 10 on consent, and the second motion will be for item 9 on consent. So I'm going to start with motion 1. I move that the board approve items 3 to 8 and 10 as listed on the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Any abstention? The motion carries. For motion 2, do I have a motion that the board approve item 9 as listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Any abstention? I'm abstaining from this vote, so the motion carries. Our next item is the fiscal year 2026 state budget request, and we will have Mr. Brad Kendricks from our ABOR office that will provide the overview of our overall fiscal year 2026 state budget request. University President and CFOs will be available to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. So Brad, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Mata and Regents. So each September, the board and the universities are asked to provide detailed budget information to the governor's office that will serve as the foundation for their forecasts and analysis for the upcoming budget year. So this is an opportunity for the universities to make those requests, as well as for the board to frame its priorities and kind of establish the narrative for the university system coming into the next legislative cycle. So for today's meeting, the board office has proposed an outline of priorities that are meant to capture the major themes that the regents and universities have been working on as they continue to pursue improvement and improvement for their communities. So these priorities are grouped into several broad areas, ranging from student access and affordability to education and research capacity in healthcare and other key industries, as well as support for the capital infrastructure that makes all of this teaching and learning possible. So in the current budget year, our system sustained a $97 million reduction in funding, with $23.3 million of that in the base budget, the ongoing budget of the university system. The first priority that we've outlined for collaboration with the governor's office is to pursue any opportunity to restore those budget reductions while providing, which all provide important flexible funding to our universities in order to meet students' needs. With the loss of roughly $100 million this year. The universities are doing everything that they can to try to minimize the impacts of those reductions, but it's hard to imagine a world in which this will not require reprioritization and or sacrifices at the universities. So acting quickly this year in order to try to reverse that decision would actually help us to potentially avoid some of the worst repercussions of the funding reductions. So as we look beyond the current funding levels, healthcare research and education has been a key priority of the board, as expressed through the Arizona Healthy Tomorrow initiative and all of the work and investments that have gone into medical schools and allied health programs at the 3 universities. Maximizing the impact of those programs and reducing the time to bring these solutions to market would be improved vastly by the partnership with the state of Arizona and the ability to make some investments in these programs in order to support them and keep them going. Beyond healthcare, the universities are faced with many opportunities to better engage industry and develop workforce towards future industry trends and to collaborate on the research and the programs that bring investment and workforce to Arizona. The universities have been key partners in the growth of semiconductors in Arizona as a most recent example. And in order to continue to take advantage of those opportunities and position Arizona well, we would be well served by funding in those spaces. Access and affordability to higher education remains a key concern for Arizonans and a key focus for the board. So the board led the development of the Arizona Promise program that was up to $40 million in funding last year, as well as the Arizona Teachers Academy that helps to subsidize the cost of education in order to attract new teachers into the field and into service in Arizona schools. Both of those programs sustained budget reductions in the last year for a total of $34 million that are no longer available in order to help support those programs. So we continue to encourage the governor's office and the legislature to look at opportunities to provide broad funding and subsidy to the university system and to Arizona students in order to make health or education as cost effective as possible. And then the last piece, and perhaps the physically largest, is this whole ecosystem of teaching and learning is based on vast capital infrastructure across research and teaching throughout the state. And this is one area where the state has a sort of tangible established responsibility in statute, but we have not, unfortunately haven't seen that funding pan out in many years. So the universities continue to ask for opportunities to partner with the state in order to bring the financial investments into the maintenance and creation and well-being of the physical plant associated with the universities in order to keep our facilities safe and to keep them cutting edge. In addition to that, the universities do continue to want to collaborate with the governor's office and the legislature on creative opportunities to make that happen. So we've looked at programs, financing programs that exist within law or others potentially like it, such as the SPEED program, the capital investment program, the finance investment program, that all provide opportunities for the government to help the universities to fully leverage their borrowing capacity and be able to, again, expand and maintain these facilities for the benefit of the state. With that, I will turn it over for a discussion among the universities and the regents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brad. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the president? President Crow?
Yes, first, it's a highly desirable strategy in the sense of laying down to the political folks what the universities need to be successful and outlining that to them in this budget request to the governor. I do want to ask if Morgan could come to the table just for a second so we might comment on an opportunity to do that and extend it just a little bit on the capital side, because the capital numbers are just a little bit different kind of number because they're not a base number or a program number. So we just have a few comments that we'd like to make relative to that, all consistent with the logic and even building on the logic. Morgan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So very supportive of the proposal that's in front of you, certainly overall. You may remember that last year at this time, part of our state investment request was we asked for about $155 million in cash to fund various areas of capital improvements. As we know now, that didn't prove successful. We did have a fair amount of success, not all the way to approval legislatively, but pretty close, with the concept of expanding the SPEED initiative that funds various capital improvements at the 3 public universities in the state. And so I think our suggestions here would be probably twofold. One is that this suggests that we would ask for additional authority under SPEED of about $200 million We'd encourage the board maybe to think even a little bigger than that. The proposal that was being discussed during the session was $325 million. And just to put that in a little bit of context, one of the things you'll see in a couple of weeks when the University Governance and Operations Committee meets is, we're planning our ASU Health Building that will be somewhere in our, downtown Phoenix campus area. We're going to spend at least $160 million on that facility. We're still discussing the exact amount. Yes, correct. No instrumentation, et cetera. So if you look at $200 million here and sort of guesstimate, how much might be allocated, maybe it's 80-ish for the University of Arizona and ASU and 40-ish for NAU. Well, that doesn't even get you a whole building.
And that wouldn't be acceptable.
And so our suggestion and the other thing here is, remember, the way that the SPEED program works is that it is an allocation of state lottery revenue. And so there's a waterfall of various things that the legislature has authorized to be funded from SPEED revenue. And actually, higher education is toward the bottom of that waterfall. Lots of other things are funded first. When we were looking last year at this idea, every year over more than the last decade, there has been enough revenue to cover everything through all the commitments above higher education and all the authorized debt service for higher education, and money was left over. So there is room within the lottery revenue to fund increased debt service. And the way that SPEED works is up to 80% of the debt service on an authorized building is funded through lottery revenue, with each institution picking up the 20% or more.
Which helps our credit rating when we pursue.
Yes.
It helps us in every possible way.
It costs you basically 20 cents on a dollar to do this. Right now, if we were to use the $200 million, rough guesstimate is that it would be a cost to the lottery revenue of about $8.6 million a year for the next 20 to 30 years, depending on the details. If we were to go with $325 million, it's only $14 million for that 80% commitment. And so this is something that would be relatively affordable for the state to do. And so our suggestion would just be that we think a little bit bigger on that piece of it, because the reality of today's world is that a significant facility with all the types of equipment and other, IT infrastructure that we have is that's what these cost. So that's the idea. If there are questions, I'll be happy to try to address it.
I'll just add, even looking back at the autopsy of our outcome from the political process and the fact that we were just assigned to the generic budget cuts to balance the budget relative to the revenue assumptions of the state, there was no need to not fund the SPEED bonds because it's a separate revenue source not affected by the tax revenue. And so the baby got thrown out with the bathwater here. And so this is a huge place for us, given the revenue that is going to the lottery, to advance under the existing rules our position. So we shouldn't be shy about that number, and we should make sure that it gets articulated to the budget folks and the other political folks in a way where it's a separate campaign, if you will. And we were 98% of the way there with the campaign last year, and it just got pushed out with everything else for some reason that at least I don't fully understand.
Virgin.
Could I do a follow-up on that? But if I understand SPEED correctly, you can only use it on infrastructure.
Yes.
So it does not help you in any way backing out the cuts that we absorb to Promise or ATA.
No, it's a separate world
Right.
financially. But our infrastructure needs, we're building 2 new schools in the ASU health space. We hope to expand our nurse production by 3x. Our facility needs are dramatic, and this is a way to get some of that funding in place, and the lottery revenues are still accelerating. So,
Madam Chair, if I could just add on one thing to Regent Duvall's question. Correct, it doesn't help us directly in terms of the use of this money, but we all know that the next, the most likely source of funding for debt service on our capital projects is tuition. And so indirectly, it allows us, reduces its fungibility and reduces pressure.
and just to put that in perspective for the regions to have awareness of the financial complexity. So our net loss for every nurse that we produce from Arizona is $18,000 a year above the tuition. And so to take more tuition revenue and disperse that further to pay for new facilities and so forth, I mean, at some point you get to the point where there's no financial viability. I mean, if anything, we should not even have nursing. It's not a financially viable thing for us to be involved in. But we do.
President Cruz Rivera.
I want to second the suggestion from our colleagues from ASU. In the case of NAU, we have a new smart, sustainable campus plan, master plan, that this board approved. If we were to, in the next 10 years, deliver on that plan, it would be about $2 billion. We also have tens of millions of dollars of deferred maintenance in our buildings. And of course, the cost of construction in Flagstaff is very different than in the Valley and in Tucson, especially because of the weather-related stresses that our infrastructure is subjected to. So I would highly recommend, given the small annual impact to the state from the lottery funds, that we go bigger.
President.
Just one last contextual point for new regents and others that are being introduced to this. This is a small part of the ASU capital plan. Almost all of our projects are self-financed with very little help from government sources. And so this isn't like this is the capital plan of the university. This is the focused capital plan for one part of the university that we're building, which are the ASU health initiatives, and this is a way for us to accelerate that. We're still doing other things and advancing on other things and raising money and so forth and so on. So it's always important, I think, to remember that this isn't the capital plan or the capital strategy for the universities. This is a way to get the state to also be an investor in their public universities.
Thank you. Any other comments? Brad?
Thank you, Chair. So just as a point of clarification and I guess reinforcement, so from the board office perspective, and it may not have been clear in this outline, but the speed bond proposal, which we fully agree with everything that Dr. Olson outlined, was meant as an additional avenue for the state to support. We think that there's a place here in the conversation both for direct investment and for enabling the universities to extend their own borrowing capacity. So the request as proposed is for up to $200 million in state direct investment
Even better.
facilities, in addition to working with us on things like speed in order to expand our own capacity.
One-time only capital
Correct.
investments, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. So I will do the motion, and I move that board approve fiscal year 2026 state budget request for the universities and the ABOR office as presented in the executive summary. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Thank you. Oppose? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Our last item is the appointment of Dr. Suresh Garimella as president of the University of Arizona. Jenny Pollock from ABOR will provide the overview. Thank you, Jenny. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Mata. Chair Mata, members of the board office is asking the board to appoint Dr. Suresh Garimella as president of the University of Arizona effective October 1st, 2024, to approve key contract terms for the multiple-year employment contract and to authorize the board chair to finalize and execute the multiple-year employment contract with Dr. Garimella as described in the executive summary and this presentation. The executive summary contains the key contract terms, including length of the contract, compensation, benefits, moving expenses, allowances and reimbursements. Future at-risk compensation will be determined, and then a faculty appointment as well. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Jenny. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I move. Thank you, Jenny. So I'm going to go ahead to the motion. There's nothing on the screen. Okay. I move that the board appoint Dr. Suresh Garimella as the president of the University of Arizona effective October 1st, 2024. Approve key terms for his multiple-year employment contract and authorize the board chair to finalize and execute the multiple-year employment contract with Dr. Garimella as presented in the executive summary. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Any abstention? The motion carries. We will now recess the public meeting and take a 45-minute break. I think will be 30 minutes because we have been behind, before reconvening in executive session at 12:30 in the executive conference room. Thank you all.